Hi, DS Middle School, it's Pastor Dwight. And can I tell you something? I think I heard God's voice, and it sounded a lot like my wife. All right, so Sarah and I have currently been in self-quarantine for at least a couple weeks now, and we've struggled in so many different areas, but I think the biggest area that we've really struggled with is social distancing, being in self-quarantine. It's actually been, how do we do ministry, right? How do you spread the gospel or even love people the way that Jesus calls us to love them when we have to stay inside our house? And that just brought up a really good experience that Sarah and I actually got to have together 2 weeks ago. See, 2 weeks ago, while we were social distancing ourselves from everyone else, we had this awesome opportunity to reach out to a friend. God really placed our friend, we'll call him Joe for right now, on Sarah's heart. And I remember Sarah coming up to me and saying, Dwight, I've been thinking a lot about Joe. And I remember thinking to myself, well, why don't we just reach out to him? So we did. We gave Joe a call the next day on Sunday, and we started talking to Joe a lot about just how he's doing, what's going on in his life, what's going on in our life. And Joe begins to open up and he says, you know, Dwight, this has been the longest time that I've spent by myself since my wife has died, and it's been driving me nuts. And then it just hit me. God really spoke to me in that moment that the biggest way for us to do ministry right now is by reaching out to those around us that maybe we haven't seen in a while. And even to be listening to God when He places someone specifically on our hearts. It just points out to me this one passage of scripture where Jesus has an interaction with a lawyer, a rich young ruler is how the Bible describes him. And in Jesus' conversation with him, the guy asks Jesus, he says, Jesus, what's the greatest commandment that we should uphold? Granted, there are 613 different commandments in the Bible, if you didn't know that. And Jesus looks at the guy and he says this in Matthew 22, verse 37. He says this, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus begins to summarize and say the entire Bible, this entire book can be summed up in these two commandments: to love God with everything that you have and to love your neighbor as yourself. And God spoke to me in that moment. It was almost as if He was saying, Dwight, this is what I want you to do. I want you to love other people while you're social distancing, while you and your wife are having to live in self-isolation from the rest of society. I want you to love them the way I've loved you, by initiating a conversation with them. So I'm gonna lay some people on your heart. And as I lay these people on your heart, I want you to reach out to them. Church, can I encourage you with that today? Is God laying someone on your heart? One of the best things that you can do in that moment is to reach out to that person. Some of you guys might be thinking, what does that even look like? If you've been thinking about it for a while, maybe God has placed that person on your heart for a reason. So reach out. I love you guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye.